Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The first item on the order of business for tonight is the election of chair. So with that in mind, can I take any proposers and seconders, please?
Yes, can I propose Lloyd Bundy as chair? Thank you, Callum.
Thank you, Councillor. Any seconders?
Could I second Councillor Bundy as chair? Thank you, Callum.
Thank you. Any other proposers? Okay, with that in mind, Councillor Bundy is elected chair. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Callum. Welcome, councillors and ladies and gentlemen. Can I just remind everybody that this is a Zoom meeting, so if people can raise their hands electronically, then hopefully between Callum and myself we'll be able to see who's wanting to speak. The second item on the agenda is the appointment of deputy chair. So are there any nominations for deputy chair?
Councillor Scrimshaw's raised his hand, Chair.
Councillor Scrimshaw?
Thank you, Chair. Could I nominate Councillor Maggie Don, please?
Okay. And
I'll second that.
thank
Chair.
you. Thank you, Councillor Thurland. Any other nominations? No? Okay, so Councillor Don is appointed deputy chair. Okay, moving on to item 3, apologies. Callum, have we got any apologies?
It'll be Eden. I'll be give these ones.
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, Eden.
No worries, Chair. Apologies so far, Monica Ozdemir and Councillor Ian Jelly so far.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have before us the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of January, which seems a long time ago in a different age. Is everybody happy for me to sign those at some point in the very near future as a true record? I'm getting nods, I'm getting no complaints, so we'll take that. Can I ask for any declarations of interest, disclosable pecuniary interests or personal interests? No? Okay. Oh,
Adams.
sorry. Yes,
Sorry.
Linda Adams, Councillor Adams. You're muted, Councillor. That's better.
Okay, sorry, Chair, my computer's not behaving tonight. Yeah, any talk about Northamptonshire? I'm employed by Northamptonshire County Council.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Scott Edwards.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but in relation to CCTV, I am actually employed by the company that currently operates the CCTV service.
I think that's just a report, so unless I'm led otherwise by officers, I would have thought that you can stay in the room at that point. Agreed? Yeah, okay. At this point, I apologise. I forgot to welcome the Mayor, probably because he came in late anyway, but welcome, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Eden, have we got members of the public who wish to speak?
We've not received any asks for that, so no.
Okay, thank you. So move straight on then to item 7, policing issues and statistics. So we've got Inspector Rob Offord in front of us. So Rob, we have the report. Do you want to say anything about it, or do you just want to take questions?
Yeah, I'll say one or two things. Can I just double check? I think everyone can hear me okay. Just a couple of things on the statistics. It obviously breaks down the wards. It doesn't do the whole borough. Just to sort of reiterate, robbery is down by 26%. Theft offence is down by 20%. If you see an increase in violence against the person, I just want to reassure everyone that we haven't suddenly become a really violent borough. There's obviously, not obviously, but there's a change in the recording standards that happened last year. That means now that harassment is booked on if you have a case, well, effectively a course of conduct. And one example is a burglar who went to case the joint the day before and then burgled the house the next day. That was booked on as a harassment. This is all part of crime data integrity. So I just want to reassure everyone that we haven't got a sudden violent crime wave, that an increase in harassment or harassment recording is contributing towards violence against the person on that front. But lockdown did see a significant dip on the front page that is not included in these minutes. It does the whole borough. That's got some graphs. You can quite clearly see a dip in April and May, a very clear dip in crime. Vehicle crime is there's a very distinct trend that it's falling, and robbery also, and burglary, particularly home invasion, is reducing significantly. That's after the introduction last year of a burglary team. Generally, one other thing to point out on the ASB stats, you'll see across the board there are when it says rowdy or inconsiderate behaviour, for a good example, the All Saints Ward is up by 39, Brambleside it's only gone up by 9, Avondale that's stayed okay, but Northfield is up 57, so that's 61% for rowdy and inconsiderate. But that's because all the COVID breaches, so whether it be gatherings, face coverings, or anything like that, they had to class it as something, and as a result, they classed it as antisocial behaviour because it was the nearest thing. So as a result, obviously April meant there was a huge spike in antisocial behaviour, but that was because of the COVID breaches, not because there was a sudden other spike in general antisocial behaviour. Generally, obviously, crime on the nighttime economy. I haven't got the stats specifically for that, but obviously there hasn't been a major nighttime economy for the last 6 months. So I'm hoping there will be a significant fall in nighttime economy offences recorded, but we'll have to see when the purple flag report comes out come March, April time. So just a couple of other points just to point out. There's been loads of speed enforcement happening in the Kettering town by the PCSOs. A new process has been worked out there whereby PCSOs, if they're crewed and can corroborate with another PCSO, will record people's driver's speed, and a prosecution will commence even with just the PCSOs there. That has been worked through with the criminal justice units. They're happy with that process. There have been countless stop and searches that have been carried out, and lots of drugs found. I'll touch upon that in a moment. Northamptonshire Police have had what they call Opera Braid, which you might have noticed in the media is the 100 days of action. There's been numerous warrants. I don't know off the top of my head the amount of warrants in Kettering alone. I've been on them myself, but there's been over 100 warrants in Northamptonshire. Half of those have been in the north, at least. Kettering neighbourhood team is getting an uplift of 4 PCs. The application's closed on Friday, so those who have applied will be going through a paper sift. So the neighbourhood team will be getting an increase in the PC numbers. We've now formed and what we call an ASB, antisocial behaviour car. So there'll be one dedicated car for antisocial behaviour, COVID patrols, including public transport patrols for face coverings, and that is also with the wardens, the KBC wardens. So they're doing many joined up patrols, at least 3 a day. That's really encouraging. And there has been a massive increase in patrols at the Brambleside Park, the Millennium Park there, to the point at which I tried to find out how many hours, and the report took so long on the computer to find that I couldn't find that in time. But just to reiterate, if you go onto our Facebook page, you'll see the many results that the neighbourhood team are getting, and that's actually being copied onto the Northants Telegraph for taking those stories on. That's a great place to find the results that have been going on. So that's just a brief précis of what's been going on in Kettering. There's many different things. I'm happy to take questions from anyone if they wish.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, and thank you, Robert, for that report. I have to say there has been an increased social media stroke press around, and I have seen the fantastic work that you guys have been doing, and that's what we need as well is the increased media, because people need to be seen that things are happening, and I can certainly see that. I've just got two questions. One is relation to COVID and people or organisations not following the rules. Have you had much increase in that in the past few months? And have you been able to have the capacity to be able to prosecute people to stop perhaps parties happening or events happening? And the second question is in relation to animal related incidents. One of my residents, unfortunately, their cat was attacked by a dog about 4 weeks ago, and unfortunately the cat had to be put down. But unfortunately, the police couldn't do anything about it because it was deemed that because it was a cat, they just can't do. They can't prosecute at all. Is that a law thing, or is that a local thing? I mean, the wardens from KBC are looking into trying to do something to with the dog owner, but is that a law thing that they just can't prosecute or can't do anything particularly with this dog? Because my concern for that is that, you know, next time, if there is a next time, that it may not be a cat.
Okay, so I'll answer that question first. Obviously, I don't know the full details of what's gone in, so it will be a fairly generic answer. So apologies if I don't answer it specifically. But what I would say is the Dangerous Dogs Act talks about dogs dangerously out of control, and they have to cause fear of harm to a person. Or harm to a person. It doesn't talk to other property such as cats or, of course, you know, any inanimate object. So so the reason why they wouldn't have been able to prosecute is because the dog would have caused harm to property, i.e. the cat, and not harm to a person or threatened harm to a person. That'll be why I should imagine, obviously I don't know the full details, but I should imagine that's the reason why for that. That's not a policy thing, that's a law. What I would say is around that, because of previous incidents in the past in Northamptonshire, now Northamptonshire are very acutely aware that they need to take action, and voluntary dog control orders need to be used, even if prosecutions can't be made. But that is in relation to, obviously, people, persons in the Act. In relation to your other question about COVID, obviously you talk about increases over the months. The way COVID legislation is and the way COVID, the virus is, it's so fluid. It changes on a weekly, sometimes daily basis in relation to the enforcement of that. We work closely with the councils and environmental health. Every Tuesday there is a partnership forum that a Zoom dial-in, well, it's a Cisco WebEx dial-in that the partners and the community safety managers dial into. The police deal with the gatherings. If there are breaches in licensing, then our licensing department will work with the borough council licensing around that. And there was a story, I believe Russell Howell was working around Aqua, because a letter that was sent to there. I won't go into the details of that because all I know about is what I read in the press. What I would say is that's really, really good to see that Kettering Borough Council have been really proactive with that and really got the bit between the teeth. And I know a lot of police officers were really pleased to see that it was being looked into. So the police will deal with the gathering side of it. We will work in partnership with the council around the environmental health and the licensing part of it. Around that. As far as have there been an increase or decrease in prosecutions, what I can't do is I can't say that because I haven't got the figures, but also the way things change on almost weekly basis is difficult to point out a trend.
Councillor Scribshaw.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Inspector Offord, for your narrative and background. I'm quite aware, having spent years and years looking at the statistics we receive at these meetings, that actually it's difficult just to sort of read too much into sort of, you know, any wider pictures from the statistics we have in a relatively small town and an even smaller ward. So actually the sort of background and the narrative, and indeed the answer you've just given to Councillor Edwards, is really quite useful. Having said that, and I wouldn't ask for special treatment for the town forum or for the council, but you did comment in your opening address about the fact that on the crime statistics we don't have the town-wide figures, but then you referred to them, so I assume that they do exist. And equally on the figures that we do have, some wards have bar charts, some do not. Again, how relevant they are, may be arguable, but again, they do seem to exist. So just a request that perhaps in future we could have the the overall town figures and the bar charts for all of them. Thank you.
If I could just respond to that, it's a computer generated report that goes out to Callum, the other forums, including I know Desborough Town Council and Rothwell have also requested it. I don't see a problem with Callum passing that Excel spreadsheet electronically to all the people in this forum. Obviously, it's printed out for ease of flicking through physically. Those graphs are borough wide and not just for the town. So just to reiterate, you won't get any. So you get the bar graphs for the wards, but you don't get any point data for the wards. You only get that for the whole borough. So what I would say is that's available, but just bear in mind that will include obviously the rural as well. So that I'm more happy for that to be obviously be made available, just to be forwarded on.
Councillor Thurland.
Sorry, thanks, Rob. Yeah, just a couple of issues, and this isn't a joke either. It seems there's been a spate of portable toilet thefts. I mean, I can't believe just your normal burglar on the off chance is going round and taking a portable loo, but one of those involved was the Teamworks Trust, who can ill afford to get things stolen. Especially now they need it because of the COVID and how they're dealing with people. So I'd like a comment on that. And technically, if there's a bus stop, can you prosecute somebody if they park and leave their car on a bus stop, irrespective of whether there's any lines on the road, please?
Okay, so so on the first one about the Portaloos, I'm not aware of the Kettering situation because that wasn't raised, but we can look into that. What I would say is it was found, for example, in Wellingborough back in August and in the months preceding that there had been a spate of Portaloo thefts. All I can ask is that the owners and those who hire them ensure that there is some unique identification on them that, well, first of all, is overtly displayed, but also can be covertly put into, whether it be smart water on a certain part of it. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's proportionate to microchip them, unless an owner wants to do that. But they do it with caravans and whatnot. I'm not saying, of course, Portaloos don't get stolen, because, of course, in Wellingborough, as I mentioned, in Wellingborough there was a spate, but they're very random. There's no particular time of day, no particular place. What I would say, unfortunately, with the type of situation that it's in, is they will be unattended on in a place that will probably not have power, won't have CCTV. So all I can say is we can look into that if that's a particular issue, if there's been a spate. It does happen. There was a trend found in Wellingborough, although I'm not aware of that trend continuing on there. But the main thing is if we seize a Portaloo, that's great. But if we can't identify its owner, just saying it's blue with a white top, unfortunately, you won't be able to reconcile that back to the original owner. You'll have to give it back to the suspects. So having some sort of identification that's covertly inside it somewhere would be really, really helpful. And on your other point about the bus stops, I need to look up the traffic law. I should imagine it would be, at the very least, it's obviously contrary to the highway code, and therefore it could look towards some sort of offence of careless driving. I should imagine it probably is contrary, but I don't want to be quoted on that because I don't know the exact law. But it would be bizarre if it wasn't.
No, because
otherwise everyone would do it otherwise.
Yeah, the problem we have is at the bottom of the road, and because the buses then can't pull in to drop their passengers, we've got a lot of elderly people here, they're having to step off quite steep steps and into the road. So that's my concern. If
there's a specific place, can whoever has informed you or yourself inform Matt Rock, the Sergeant Matt Rock at in the team, and then we can do some extra patrols around there, just to because I bet you I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a handful of people who are doing it habitually.
Oh, it's the same people. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we can even if we give them some guidance, even if they're not there at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Reference has been made tonight to Brambleside Park, and I'd like to take this opportunity just to pass on thanks that I've received from residents for the action taken early this year. We had a spike in antisocial behaviour, particularly during the lockdown period, and there was some very proactive work done by local police teams. So obviously emails that I've received saying thank you to me as council, I want to pass on to police colleagues. Similarly, on vehicle crime in the Brambleside area, we'd had quite a spike. Certainly 2018, 2019 in theft from vehicles of tools and what have you. And that seems to have been reduced, just not just what I've seen and heard, but in the data. So that's clearly a good sign. So keep up what you're doing there in the Brambleside area. And I know Councillor Parker and myself have a number of concerns about drugs and drug sales in the Brambleside area. And understand there's a meeting due shortly to discuss that with police colleagues. So I do hope that there'll be a similarly proactive and effective response to that as well. So nice to pass on resident emails that I've received praising the police.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Don.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Rob. In your introduction, you mentioned the increase in neighbourhood team personnel, which is obviously good news. Are we going to get back to the situation where we have named officers for each area, please?
Right. So there are already named PCs and PCSOs for each area. What you might find is one PC, because it's a problem-solving team and not that one PC has everything for that area, because you can imagine that would just overwhelm them. That PC may have 2 or 3 wards. So there are already named police constables and PCSOs for those wards. Matt Rock will be able to tell you exactly which person, because we move them about as people, or whether there's movements in staff or illness, we move people about quite regularly. Just to clarify, that increase of the extra 4 will only be for the priority areas. So it'll be on the areas where there's the most crime. So the town centre, St Michael's Wicksteed, the Grange Estate, and Rockingham Road.
That's what we do. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Inspector Offord, back in January, the Superintendent Dennis Murray came and spoke to the forum, and in his report he used the very words community policing. Now I jumped on that because I believe that's been missing from the Borough of Kettering for some years. Can you assure me, I know the inspector is moving on to pastures new, and I want it to be assured by you that this community policing is going to go ahead, because personally I haven't actually seen any of it. I'm talking personally now. Hopefully it is happening, and I want your assurance that our residents are going to see more police on the streets. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
If I could just clarify, the reason why obviously a lot of you will know me from my time on the rural. I'm currently covering this month Wellingborough and East Northampton, simply because of the staffing situation over there. Scott Little, who was the inspector before, has been acting up as temping up as chief inspector. He is returning at the end of the month to be the Kettering and Corby inspector. So he will remain. He's not getting promoted. He wants to remain firmly in with the community in Kettering Corby. It's nice to have a bit of stability. So you get a lot of people who want to carry on and get promoted and going up. So just to reassure you, you will have the same inspector that you have had before the COVID period. And of course, he was a sergeant in Kettering before. In relation to the community policing, that was obviously an announcement by the PCC and the Chief Constable 2 years ago that there'll be extra funding for neighbourhoods, rural crime, antisocial behaviour and whatnot. But before they got to that point, with all the HMIC reports that had come in, and there was a lot of work that had to be done. One thing that was clear, they had to get the numbers up on response teams and other teams there. Now those numbers are at the levels that they believe they should be at. They are now. This is now the time that they are recruiting. So it has, unfortunately, and I do apologise, has taken a long time coming, but there's now this increase in neighbour policing in Kettering. There's some over in Wellingborough, and there's also 3 on the rural crime team. I know that those bits on the periphery don't equate to obviously the town forum, but that just goes to show that those commitments that were made 2 years ago are now coming to fruition as funding stream comes through. Those people who have been newly recruited are trained up and tutored. Some of them being tutored on the neighbourhood team, actually, because there's not enough tutors, which is really good. So we sometimes actually have more than what we should have. But the point being is now extra staff are now being put into the neighbourhood teams. And towards the end of this year and moving into next year, there will be a review of neighbourhood policing in the whole force under the FP25. When that is coming, I don't know, because I'm not in that team, but I do know that there has to be a review. They've reviewed everything else, but they are now reviewing the neighbourhood team. So I hope that with the increase in numbers, there will be a return to community policing. But what's really important is we don't have police officers who go around drinking cups of tea all day, but actually they lock people up. And then when you've got drug dealing going on in a block of flats, those community officers dedicated to that area, they go and tackle that, whether it be through arrest or the judicial process or through problem solving with partners. And so with those increase of those people, they should be dedicated just to Kettering.
Thank you, Rob. Anybody else? I've got no more hands up. No? Okay, well, thank you very much, Rob, for your time. You are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, which I always extend that offer, but never really taken up on it. The next item might be of interest. It's CCTV update, but depart when you want, Rob.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
CCTV update on capital expenditure, John Kinlock.
Good evening. You've all had the report. I'd just like to go through a few bits on it just to explain a little bit more, just sort of what we've done with the capital spend. The purpose of the capital bid was to try to upgrade the CCTV cameras in the town centre, the main thoroughfares around the town centre. They started breaking down. They were getting obsolete. The cameras were getting obsolete. The picture quality was atrocious. Nighttime quality was really poor. You couldn't distinguish between colour renditions because the lenses were that poor. With the upgrade of the lighting, the PF5 program with the lighting, that made it even worse because there was just too much light for the cameras to work on. What we did was we introduced new cameras, Wi-Fi cameras in the Meadow Road project, which made it a lot better. And when we've seen the quality of the pictures in the Meadow Road, we've started to think about putting in for a capital bid to upgrade some of the town centre CCTV. And this is just one of the snapshots off there. You've got the before on the left-hand side where you can see it's all grainy. You can hardly make people out. And on the right-hand side is one of the new cameras, one of the new Wi-Fi cameras, which is totally crisp. You can actually see the block paving in the pavements. So that just shows you the difference in the quality of the cameras. Throughout the bid, we were trying to get the best prices for the cameras. We said we'd do 17 cameras. We actually done 21 cameras because we wriggled some of it around a little bit. And we've got 4 fixed cameras in the town centre now. On Market Street, we've got 1 fixed camera on the bollards because we used to have a lot of problems with the bollards being damaged. So that's 1 facing up there, and the other fixed camera faces down Market Street. And on Meadow Road, if you go along near Jenny's Cafe, you'll see some more fixed cameras there. 1 heading down towards McDonald's and the High Street, and the other one heading down towards Meadow Road bollards for the same reason. Here's another picture here of the picture quality of the new and the old cameras. I think you can see that there's a vast improvement in the new cameras. The new Wi-Fi technology is tremendous. We're still checking out, making sure that we've got the dual purpose there so that in case one of the technologies breaks down, but we're testing that at the moment and it's working really, really well. The cameras that we've replaced, we're going to revamp those cameras and use them anywhere else in the town centre or the rest of the borough to actually upgrade some of the other cameras because some of those other cameras are a little bit old. But that's what we've done at the moment. But I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Councillor Scrimshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do have a question on numbers of cameras. Probably my fault, probably haven't read the report as closely as I should have done. It says we have 62 existing CCTV cameras, and this capital expenditure is to sort of renovate, revamp, service them, and also to provide 17 new Wi-Fi cameras rather than sort of analog hardwired, which is obviously what some of what you've just been showing. The bit I'm not exactly sure of, does that mean we're going to end up with more cameras, or are those 17 just replacing some of the 62, so we still have 62? And you did also just mention, didn't you, that some of the ones that will be replaced might be reused elsewhere. So again, is that going to eventually overall increase the number from 62? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, we've got, like I say, we do have 62. We've put 4 new fixed cameras in there. There won't be any other expansions at the moment until we get some more funding to do that. But what we will do is make sure that all the other cameras in the other areas of the town are working now. We're using, like I say, we're going to revamp some of the older ones, the ones we've taken out of the town centre and put into the other areas. So you're getting a rolling stock now of cameras. So also by replacing these 17 with Wi-Fi cameras, the analog, we've got a rolling stock now. So if one breaks down, we can get one straight back up and running. My purpose is to try and make sure that we've got all of the cameras up and running at all the time in Kettering, because there's no point having cameras if they're offline or broken. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, John, for that presentation. Just 2 questions from me. First, on the Wi-Fi, just to confirm how confident we are that in the event of power cuts or other issues regarding network outages or what have you, we're confident that that will continue and offer continued coverage with or without those issues. And another point just regarding ANPR, my understanding is that the police are gradually looking to improve their NPR provision on key gateways and points of access across the county. Is there any opportunities perhaps to link up with the police to offer that? I don't know if our technology does offer that, but perhaps it's further assistance if they're trying to track someone or trying to locate vehicles or what have you. Thanks.
Yes, certainly. Yes, you're right about the technology, but that's why we're running dual technology at the moment until we're totally secure that is going to work. If there's a power outage, the Wi-Fi transmissions use minimal power anyway, so we're looking at having some sort of backup with them. With the ANPR, yes, the police are increasing the ANPR coverage across the whole of the county, really, and Kettering and the rural are going to benefit quite profitably from that. And our cameras used to use Wi-Fi, ANPR technology, but the police have now taken all of their ANPR back in-house, and they don't run it from CCTV control rooms anymore, but they have that back in-house, so they know what they're doing with that, and that seems fair for them.
Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad Rob stayed, because I'd just like to say thank you, John, for you and your team. It's really good the way you work with the police and the PCSOs and us councillors. I know if we've all got a problem, we can come to you, copying in the others. So it really is a joined up programme and the teamwork. And I think Rob got let off lightly tonight compared to some of the forums that we've had, but that's really good, John. So thank you to you and your team. Just talking about reconditioned cameras and that, when we talk on Wednesday about our new ones for the park, they're not going to be reconditioned, are they?
No, certainly not.
Thank you.
They're going to be new ones.
Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. John, many years ago, back in the early 2000s, a camera was put up, security camera was put up in the parking area at Brambleside shops, and it had something like 360-degree vision on it, so it could also cover the school and what was going on all around. Can you tell me if it's still operational? I say it was quite a long time ago, so it may be one that needs replacing. I know we're talking predominantly about the town centre, but it is also important that we have it in those sort of areas as well.
Yes, you're right. I think one of the things I've got concerns with is there's a lot of these areas across the town, shopping areas that haven't got CCTV. Brambleside has got CCTV. I'm not sure if that's up and running. I don't know how long that's been down. I haven't seen any stats for Brambleside CCTV, but what I will do is I'll check on that and I'll get back to you with any sort of updates I can on that.
I'd be grateful if you could. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Right, I just wonder for how long are the images retained of those cameras, or is that maybe confidential information? I don't know. It's just I cannot imagine that those images are constantly being watched. So it's important when a crime has been reported that we can go back and look at the images. And I just wonder, is there absolutely no way that we could install a camera on the crossing, the junction between London Road and St Mary's Road, because so many drivers are jumping the lights there. It's awful, and it's just become commonplace now. So I would even say install a broken camera there, but better still, please install a camera there that works so that people don't feel they will get away with it. It's something I've repeated a few times in this forum. Thank you.
Okay. CCTV images are retained for 31 days, as in line with the Surveillance Cameras Commissioner's guidelines. So they're retained for 31 days. So if anybody has any problems, make sure that they get some sort of request into the DPO before the 31 days are up. Otherwise, we won't be able to gain those images back. As for the London Road St Mary's, yeah, I think that might be another little project for Matt Rock and the PCSOs to actually look at that, because I think if you put a CCTV camera down there, by the time you've got somebody to respond to that, you may as well just do some ad hoc checks down there, and I'm sure Rob will agree with that.
Would I be able to come in on that one?
Yeah, carry on, Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when it comes to prosecuting people for red traffic light offences, obviously the two systems are different in the sense that you've got the CCTV system that John deals with, and it's obviously funded by the council. I'm not in the Safer Roads partnership, so I don't know exactly what setup they've got, but I do know is that the camera system for red traffic lights is a separate system, would have to be a Home Office approved device, and there also needs to be sensors installed and all manner of things. So it's certainly something I'm just writing an email to Matt Rock to ask him to consider and speak to the Safer Roads team. But what they will likely do is do a, I say covert, a traffic survey of how many people are going through those red lights first to see if there is a case to justify the expenditure.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Before I go on with a couple of things I want to say, could I just remind everybody through you, Chair, that I'm actually here as a borough councillor and not as the mayor, which I think is very important. I do a lot of ward work, as you all know, and I'm still a borough councillor. Going on to, I think there's going to be an issue, John, when you get to the Rural Forum and the A6 Towns Forum in regards, because all these new cameras that we have actually been installed in Kettering, I understand. I know that item 211 states that if it's successful, it might be rolled out into the A6 towns. But I think it's something that you should consider with the new revamping of the old cameras you've taken down. Maybe you can consider putting them as soon as possible into the A6 towns, because I think you're going to have a few rural councillors and A6 town councillors saying that Kettering's received more than anything else. And I've heard it before, and I think you'll hear it again. The other thing through you, Chair, is the actual system currently costs over £213,000. I wonder, is there any way of having a costed out for this forum to see actually where this money is being spent, in which direction it all goes? I would like to see a costing of that amount, please. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes, you're right, Councillor. Those reconditioned cameras, the majority of them will be going to rural, because rural have got 12 cameras. I think 8 of those cameras are a little bit suspect, so 8 will definitely go to rural, And I'll be going to the Rural Forum next week just to make sure that we can understand, so that we can tell them what we're doing with the cameras, because you're right, they shouldn't be left out on the sidelines, but I will cover that with them.
Any more comments? I've got no more hands raised. Thank you very much, John. Moving swiftly on to item 9, COVID-19 related business support activities. And I've got Claire Cowland and Russ Howell.
Thank you, Chair. I think the papers go with me first. Yes, they do. So I'll just say my bit and then I'll hand over to Claire. Thank you, Callum. We can move away from the standard picture of a COVID virus. It's just been asked to give a little bit of information around what we've been doing in health protection and public service with regards to supporting businesses and the wider workload that we've had during this pandemic. Starting with, well, when we went into lockdown and since, certainly the health protection team has been keeping businesses, or trying to keep businesses, informed on legislative changes. As I'm sure everybody appreciates, the rapidity of legislative change and the production of guidance has been incredible in the last 6 months, more than I've ever seen in any other field of work that I've been dealing with in environmental health in the years that I've been doing it. So the team have been trying to keep on top of making sure that from when businesses locked down, businesses understood who could open, who could close, what they needed to do, through to the gradual opening up of businesses from kind of July onwards with pubs and the like, that we tried to keep on top of informing all of those businesses as to what they needed to do to make sure that they complied with what was needed from them. It's been challenging, but I think we've done a pretty good job between us in terms of doing that. As well as the health protection team, we've had support from the wardens who have been monitoring the parks and the open spaces, the buses and the town centres, in terms of keeping an eye on compliance, especially more recently with regards to social distancing and the requirement for face coverings. And together with that, we've been using John's CCTV system, certainly in the nighttime economy, as a more effective way of keeping an eye on what's been going on in the nighttime economy, because none of us can be there all of the time. And so CCTV has been our eyes on the ground throughout Fridays and Saturday nights, especially in terms of giving us intelligence as to where we needed to be and who do we needed to be talking to. We've also had the police in the town centres obviously giving us information on things that are going on. And we've also had the police feeding us information from information they've been receiving from members of the public. So we're getting our intelligence from all over the place in terms of dealing with our businesses. We've also been working closely with Kettering Pub Watch since July. Since the easing of lockdown for pubs, it's been really difficult for them, and we appreciate how difficult it's been for those. Probably easier in the rural areas than those that we have in Kettering town, because obviously their economy was based on a later and a different kind of business model, and with the whole 2 metre distancing or 1 metre distancing with other measures and all the other stuff that's come in since, it has been really challenging for them to try to open and operate in a way that's been viable for them. And I think it's in the recent weeks, it's become more challenging for them again with the 10 o'clock closure, but we all understand why that needs to happen. As I said, we have been working with other partners, the police in particular, and Rob has already referred to the work that he's been doing with the wardens based on the intelligence that we've been getting from the CCTV, because we've had them monitoring the buses and the passengers getting on and off the buses and going in and out of the town centre, the shopping centre. And that has given us some ideas of where we need to go to enforce the face coverings requirements. So you'll be seeing more partnership working between the police and the wardens in terms of dealing with those particular issues. We've also been working closely with the Public Health Service at County Council. Obviously, they have the information that we need in terms of where cases are, where clusters of cases might be. I have to say, Kettering Town hasn't been too bad. In terms of comparing us with Northampton or Corby, we've been quite fortunate in the way the model has been, although it's sometimes, in some respects, it's been a little bit more challenging because it's more spread out than other areas have had, where they've had particular outbreaks. And we've also been working with the Public Health England as well. Also, on behalf of Northamptonshire County Council Public Health, we've been visiting some residential care homes at their request to carry out specific COVID-19 assessments in premises of concern that they have, where they don't have the resources to visit them all themselves. So our environmental health officers have been visiting some of the residential care homes in the town and the wider borough, just to confirm that proper risk assessments are in place and operating in these care homes. We've also been required more recently to deliver test and trace letters for Public Health England. Under the test and trace system, they have a system where they will try to contact people on a number of telephone calls in a period of time. And if that isn't achieved, then a letter needs to be delivered to them, and that letter needs to be delivered by hand. And we're providing that service for them as and when required. On top of that, the wardens have delivered approximately 2,500 COVID-19 leaflets to businesses in the town that they can give to their customers, providing information on COVID-19 and the distance requirements and the cover requirements and the hand washing requirements. So if we can have the next slide, please, Carl. Thank you. In terms of actual numbers of work, just to give you some idea of the kind of workload that we've had in the last 6 months, or the 6 months between the 16th of March and the 16th of September, when I prepared the report, we've received 361 COVID-specific service requests in the health protection team. These are from members of the public concerned about the way businesses are operating, concerned about the way their workplace is operating, as well as issues identified by our wardens in the parks and open spaces. We also have some NCC wardens who patrol Kettering Town Centre on a Friday and Saturday night, and they provide us with information on what they see, and then we visit those premises based on that intelligence. From all of that, as you can see from the stats, we've made 232 phone calls in that period, visited 360 premises, and 2 prohibition notices were served, one of which I'm pleased to hear Inspector Offord say that he was pleased to have served on the Aqua nightclub in town. The other one was on a gymnasium, also in the town centre. And both of these premises were opened contrary to the coronavirus regulations. They shouldn't have been open. There's a specific requirement that these types of premises, well, the gymnasium was at the time before they could open, pre-July. The nightclub still can't open. There's still a legal requirement for it to remain closed, and so that prohibition notice remains in place. We've also made 75 intelligence gathering visits in the same period based on some of the intelligence that we've received. And we've also recorded 209 activities where we've been sending information to businesses, assessing risk assessments for some of those businesses so that they could reopen back in the early days, and carrying out some spot checks on compliance with the newer regulations. And just in terms of numbers, just to say where we are, I mean, this has been delivered by 3.6 full-time equivalent officers in the health protection team, with support from the wardens. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Russ. Shall we take questions now, or should we move on to Claire? Well, we've got 3 hands raised, so Councillor Scrimshaw.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Russ. That was actually really an interesting presentation, but I do have a couple of questions. I was interested to hear that you're using the CCTV that we've just been discussing to sort of monitor COVID misuse of the nighttime economy. And I'm sure we've all heard stories about people sort of misbehaving once they've had a couple of drinks, forgetting social distance rules while they're queuing at kebab shops, etc. How does that actually work? Do you ask the operators, who are private operators, to report any misuse they see perhaps the following morning, and if so, is that a regular occurrence, or do KBC sort of monitor the footage, the Monday after the weekend themselves to see if they can spot anything? And the other question I've got. You mentioned that your staff are checking and advising on risk assessments for care homes, but I mean, surely that's a role for NCC's adult social care, and I sort of genuinely, you know, why are KBC involved in that? Why aren't the county council doing that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The first question with regards to the use of CCTV, I have to say that Three Lions Security, who look after the CCTV system for Kettering Borough Council, have been absolutely fantastic. And basically their operators through the night record anything that they see that they think is a concern from a COVID point of view and give us a full report at the end of the weekend that we can then pick up and address. With regards to residential care homes, sorry if I misled you, we've been checking risk assessments for some businesses, not care homes. What we've been doing in care homes is filling in a questionnaire that NCC Public Health have provided us with, that asks a number of questions about the way the business is operating, that we then feed back to NCC Public Health for them to pick up on.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Russ, that's such an interesting report, and it's a ginormous workload that you've been doing. I cannot believe you've been doing that with 3.6 full-time equivalent officers. That is just so much. I at one point I remember I addressed an email to you asking why a shop that had changed hands hadn't been inspected as it needed to before it could start operating. But you said then how busy you'd been, but until we see the numbers, it's impossible for us to imagine the workload. So it's just awesome what you've all been doing, and well, I just hope you get reinforcement where you need to. Sometimes councillors could be called on to distribute leaflets as well. I've said that before. You can call on them, but no, that's enormous. I'm very impressed by what you've been doing, what you've achieved. So thank you for that report.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Thurland.
Yeah, I've got just two questions, Russ. I mean, when COVID started, we were really good about our homelessness, and we went round, and I know John Conway's team housed quite a few people, you know, especially those that wanted to go in there. But we've noticed that there's it's steadily on the increase now, especially outside the Marks and Spencer's building, and also the tents in the church car park. Have you got enough staff to look at these homelessness? Are these people that we've already housed and they've had to go back, or where are they coming from? And also, when you're advising people, do you actually stop and advise, or do you stop and fine? Because I understand PCSOs and can wardens actually issue COVID related fines? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll answer the second one first, because I don't think I can answer the first one. In terms of the wardens, as far as face mask wearing is concerned, it's not a local authority enforced matter. It's a police enforced matter. So we're basically educating and advising when we're out and about.
That's good.
In terms of the homelessness question, I'm afraid I can't really help you on that one. I will point you in the direction.
I think Shirley's got a hand up saying
I think we'll give you the answer you want.
Russ, I wouldn't have been. I'm not surprised, and I wouldn't have been surprised if you just said, "Well, we're doing our best," because I do appreciate, like Councillor Lee said, it is a hard job. Thank you.
Shirley, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, Chair, if I can just confirm, the housing team are continuing to monitor some of the issues around homelessness, because we do know, yes, you're quite right, during the first stage of lockdown, we managed, I think, to get everyone off the streets and into accommodation. Not everyone has wanted to stay there, I have to say. So there has been a slight shift in the pattern of staying in temporary accommodation. But I know John and the team are continuing to work both with local agencies and themselves in trying to address all of these cases, because obviously we don't want people out on the streets at the moment, or we don't at any time, but particularly now.
Yeah, because is David Walsh working with you with those that are in the church car park, leading up to the actual church steps?
My understanding is that, yes, housing are in touch with David Walsh, but I will check with John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thanks, Shirley.
Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Russ, you talked about the Kettering Town Centre, and of course one of the problems that we have there is that areas such as Wellington Street, Nelson Street, Havelock Street, all of these streets are terraced houses. And at one time they were all lived in by individual families, that type of thing, but most of them now are houses of multiple occupancy. So how do you manage to control and make sure that the people who live in these houses are complying to the rules?
You're taking me out of my comfort zone there, Councillor. Houses in multiple occupation, again, is a private sector housing issue, and I know that they have contacted, I believe, the landlords of all of the houses in multiple occupation. They have registered with them and given them all the same COVID advice that we've been handing out. But as you say, I mean, there is a real issue that there are some of these smaller terraced houses that are being occupied by more than one person that are not necessarily being classed as HMOs, and there are some of those problems, and I think that's where Greencore in Northampton found some of its problems in the way that their employees were living in Northampton. As I say, fortunately, we haven't had those kind of problems that Greencore had in the Kettering area, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that we don't.
Can I just come back on that? I understand what you're saying, but do you have any powers to prosecute the owners of the properties if you can demonstrate or prove that they're actually the people who live in the property aren't doing as they should?
In a straightforward answer, no, I'm afraid we don't, Councillor. That, again, that's outside of our remit. We would advise if we found out about them and provide the information that we could, but beyond that, the enforcement powers in terms of COVID are actually very limited. Certainly in a private household.
Shirley, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, Russ is correct. We took a lot of learning from some of our neighbouring authorities and some of the issues they faced, particularly around HMOs, and there was a lot of specific work done with colleagues in private sector housing and environmental health and the public health team to create resources so that should we identify cases happening in houses in multiple occupation, a lot of support and guidance could be provided. But Russ is correct, some of the more informal shared houses aren't registered, so it really is just about keeping in touch with our colleagues in housing and making sure we know location of incidences through the public health team if there are cases rising, which is a lot of the work that we do on a daily basis, liaising with Public Health and Public Health England. It's around this to try and keep it under control and provide the right support and guidance to people as they need it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thurland, you've got your hand raised again.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to say, talking about HMOs and that, and Shirley, I know you were kind enough to send a lot of leaflets round to our ward, and I do believe that because our numbers are rising, not large numbers, I have to say, but I do think that we have a large number of HMOs, probably not registered either, which Shirley's team has leafleted, but as you've said, unless somebody tells them and they, we find out about it, there's not a lot we can do, is there?
Shirley?
Councillor Thurland, you're right. However, through the testing process and the test and trace, we do get the details of addresses in Kettering. So part of the health protection team and my role at the moment is actually working with the public health team of the county council and tracking that, and we keep an eye on the numbers. We keep an eye on whether they're clusters, whether it's the same address, the same streets, is it near a school, is it near a particular business, for all of those reasons, and that's when we can start to intervene and, if you like, and provide the support needed.
Yeah, that's good, thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Russ, I just kind of want to echo what Councillor Lee said, that I think you guys are doing an absolutely fantastic job. Now, I know there are some people out there who think that they are above the law and that face masks, you don't have to wear them. And I fully accept that there are people that can't wear face masks because for medical reasons. But how are you dealing with these people when you're approaching them and advising them that they should be wearing it? Are they not getting aggravated or, you know, returning with abuse? Are the police working with you on that?
This, from the police working with us perspective, that is something that Rob referred to earlier and that I referred to. That's something that the wardens and PCSOs are starting on again now, especially since the legislation's just changed so that everybody should be wearing face masks in enclosed premises. Previously, it was just a case of advising people, and as you say, yes, some people don't want to hear what you're saying, and there's not a lot else you can do about that. Or you can just tell them, and if they don't want to listen, you have to walk away, because we're certainly not going to put our staff in a position where it's going to get physical or they're going to be verbally assaulted. So we have just been providing that kind of advice to the point where if they don't want to listen, we just have to leave it at that.
Rob, do you want to come in now?
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, just one other point to one thing I had emailed Russ and some others about is we just need to be careful of some people have ailments where on the face of it they look, well, that person looks like they're absolutely fine. Why haven't they got a face mask? And then it can be a very sensitive subject to go and ask people about because it could be a disability they don't want to talk about necessarily. What I would say is I have made a point of dip sampling with PCSOs when it's been raised. We got these images from the CCTV. We just have to be careful. It's definitely a very good tool for intelligence gathering to see how people behave. Do they get on the bus with a face mask and then take it off and whatnot? But in the same way, you wouldn't film someone putting a disabled badge on the window of a car and then see them walking off going, well, that person's not disabled. You know, you wouldn't do that. So we have to be careful with people on the bus. What I would say, if dip sample with the PCSOs, they are saying on the whole, generally, when people are challenged, they are producing cards to say that they have a reason not to be wearing a face mask. It does become, you do have to temper how much you ask them, certainly in the audience of the rest of the people on the bus, and you have to take on face value that they have one of these cards to say that they shouldn't be wearing a face mask. But similarly, the presence or the lack of a card doesn't mean to say that they can be fined. They may also say, well, you know, I've got a reason to COPD or asthma or some reason. So we just have to be careful that there are some people in our society who we're there to protect. The whole point is all of this is protecting them because they have a respiratory disability or disease. And we just have to understand that those people won't be wearing face masks. But on the whole, on the main, people have responded very well with the PCSOs when they have been doing these patrols. And the way we're doing it is through spot checks where they are turning up at bus stops and with their body worn video on from the beginning as the bus pulls up to see if anyone quickly puts the mask on or whatnot. And we're not finding a great deal of people who are not complying.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Thurland, you got your hand up yet again.
I have, yeah, just to say that, am I right in thinking you can get lanyards now with yellow flowers on or sunflower? I'm not a horticulturist, but you can get them. Sunflowers, yeah. Do we, or can we supply them, or do we know where people get them? Because I only know because a friend of mine carries one.
Shirley, or?
Well, I was going to say, Councillor Thurland, I have to be honest with you. I don't know where you get them. I presume if you have a care provider or you can get them through charities, but we could certainly make some inquiries so that we can promote them.
Shirley, I can actually answer that question. The Newland Shopping Centre actually gave them out to people with hidden disabilities as part of the Sunflower scheme. They have run out now, but there is a website which I can forward to you, Leslie, on where people can order them from.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Thank you, Callum. Claire Cowland, would you like to come in now?
Oh, thank you. Callum, if you can put the presentation back up. Okay, thank you. So I'm just following on from Russ's slides. I'm just going to go into a bit more detail about safer public spaces and town centres. And we talk about the reopening of high streets, but of course they've never actually been closed. They have been opened for essential shops and services throughout the lockdown. And there's been some really good examples of best practice where those shops and services have been managing their queues effectively. But where they might need a bit more support, Russ's team have been really proactive, as he's been talking about, going in and offering some more guidance. In terms of like in the run up to non-essential shops opening at the beginning of June, the government issued guidance on how to manage the increase in footfall while still maintaining social distancing. So they produced this framework to give that guidance. And in terms of the increase of footfall in public spaces, there's a number of public bodies which have a role in managing this. And as a result, a county-wide task group was established, consisting of local authorities and public health and highways. And the remit of that group was to provide a coordinated response to support wider reopening of high streets, sharing of best practice, and that group still continues to meet every week. So we're still very much in the reactive phase. And the final point on this slide is that all of these measures to support social distancing in public spaces, they cost money. And so the government established two funds, the Reopening High Street Fund and the Emergency Active Travel Fund, both of which can support, I say, some of the costs and of the measures to support social distancing. And before I go on to the next slide, although the focus of this presentation is more about Kettering Town Centre, I should highlight all of the activity I'm talking about has happened in Kettering, but also the A6 towns as well. So next slide, please, Helen. So this is just a brief slide just to explain how the activity has been coordinated within Kettering Borough Council. So there was a working group established, a reopening high street working group established in the early days in the run up to the wider reopening, which consisted of Russ's team in environmental health, ourselves in economic development, planning, street cleansing, wardens, our communications team, events and community safety. So basically anyone who has a remit within the town centre, so we could all get involved together to support businesses and keep the town centre safe for visitors. Next slide, please. So this slide, it focuses on that initial emergency response, and I've broken it down really into the physical and the practical support. So firstly, like on the physical side, all businesses were offered, I've put down here the queue markers, but there are actually other materials that we had available, such as barriers, all free of charge for businesses to use to help them manage queues and display the messages. And also these messages were backed up with high street wide signage. And then there was, through the County Council, we've seen the emergency active travel initiatives, such as the temporary bike racks, and the bike racks have ended up having quite a long lead-in time, but we're very mindful that initiative needs to link in with plans for permanent cycle storage in the town centre. And there was a consultation exercise done during the summer, very good response rate, which looked at cycling, encouraging people to cycle as a mode of transport to get into the town centre. And 66% of the respondents said that there needed to be more secure cycle storage within the town centre and the surrounding area. And as I understand, there are going to be some permanent cycle racks, additional ones at the train station, and there are permanent cycle storage planned into the public realm plans for Meadow Road. And then the other initiative that the Emergency Active Travel focused on was the widening of pavements. So where there are areas of footfall within town centres across the county that are particularly narrow and do not allow social distancing to happen, and therefore widening of pavements are required, which I appreciate are the very unattractive barriers. Although that's a good example of where emergency active travel, which is more quite a county-wide project, and the reopening of High Street, which is more of a district-led project, work together, because the barriers can be supported through the emergency active travel, but we're actually looking through the Reopening High Street Fund to put some covers over those to make them look more attractive in where we have them cases such as Montague Street. And then secondly, on the engagement side, our communications team have been very proactive in leading a marketing campaign to promote people to come safely back into the town centres. And as well, we might have all these materials available for businesses to use for social distancing, but they need to know about it. So we did an information leaflet in the very early days of the wider reopening of the high streets to let them know about what support there was available. And we got a really good uptake of that. And there's over 70 businesses now across the 4 towns who have either or a mix of the floor stickers that they use and the barriers. And then finally, in terms of business support, you're hopefully aware of Enterprise Kettering. That's a website and social media is very popular, and we use that to push out messages about what support there is available out there. Webinars such as SEMLEP offered to all to give that up-to-date advice for businesses. So next slide, please. So I think it's always useful to have some examples of these things in action. So you'll see, sorry, my presentation skills aren't great, so I've cut off some of the art gallery. But McDonald's and the art gallery, you can see they're examples of the barriers. So we did a mix of some metal ones and some wooden ones. And we loan those free of charge out to businesses that need those for queue management. And then some examples outside Barclays of some stickers, floor stickers, and then 2 examples of floor stickers. We have a range of messages. I've put some distance ones, but we have a range of messages. There's some that say queue stops here. There's some that say collect here if it's like supporting click and collect, etc. So the range of messages, all of these available free of charge, delivered to businesses who want them, and they're being actively used. So there's one that's a more locally focused sticker and one that's part of the county-wide project. So next slide, please. So all the initiatives that I mentioned in the previous couple of slides, they are all, they're initiatives that we hope that will be funded through the Reopening High Street Fund in terms of the social measuring distances, the stickers, etc. But there are things there are quite a few things that are outside of the scope of that fund. But they are certainly that there is additional support out there that nonetheless are supporting businesses and visitors. So proactively, we put the temporary toilets in by Meadow Road. As I understand, I think they're in at least until the end of December. But then there's also the wider borough council initiatives such as the free parking and the waiving of the market pitch fees, all things that we hope like collectively will help get people into the town centre and support those businesses. And next slide, please. And this is my final slide. So we are still very much in the reactive phase, but we are focusing on recovery as well. There is a lot of information out there that suggests, you know, it's more the city town centres that are struggling, whereas the smaller town centres, actually people as they're working from home are wanting to go into the smaller centres, and that in terms of reduction in footfall, it's been far lower in smaller town centres. People want to get to know their local areas again. So we've very much focused on, with our communication colleagues, on an extensive social media campaign. We did a film when town centres were reopening about how safe it was. We've done some showcasing films about particular businesses in the town centre, and we've tried to make it a welcoming place to come back in. So there's examples of some street art. We've done an entertainment programme. We're looking at Christmas and how we can safely support people back into the town centre, but you know, as a chance to again showcase those independents with a real offer. And then finally, if you want to find out more information, I've put the web link there that explains, like, this is Kettering, it's a dedicated site about the reopening of the town centre, and you can see the videos and all the activities that have been going on. And any questions?
Thank you, Claire. Yes, Councillor Lee. You're still muted, Councillor.
Unmute. Thank you. Thank you for that report, Claire. You mentioned the secure cycle storage. Now, I thought it was already decided last year that secure cycle storage would be installed. Now, you say that the consultation over the summer was to see whether the public wanted secure cycling storage. I understood that it was about the location. Now, you've mentioned that secure cycling storage will be installed at the station and in Meadow Road Park. Are you saying we're not considering secure cycling storage near the Newland Centre, in the horse market for people taking the bus? I mean, the whole impetus is to try and get people who are now using cycling, and there's new cycling lanes, which are great in St Mary's Road and Montague Street, to get them to actually do their shopping in town and in the Newland Centre and elsewhere, and leave their bike there without the risk of it being stolen. So are those really the only two locations where we are going to install secure cycling storage? That's my question.
If I can answer that the best I can, because really this is not something that I've directly been involved with, but it was more of an illustration of how this is linking with the proposed temporary measures. No, not at all. They aren't the only locations. It's just the only time frame I have at the moment. And as I understand, and if my colleagues want to add to this, I don't think the consultation over the summer was should we have it. It was more a case of the demand and getting some ideas of location and some input from the community.
I think it's a typical thing where once it's there, people will use it. It depends. Well, I think it should be installed. You know, you shouldn't always use a consultation. That's what we've got plans for, what we use consultants for. Why we, okay, I'll leave the floor to other people about this point.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Claire, can I congratulate you and your team? We live in such difficult times and unprecedented times at the moment, and we don't know where we're going and what we're doing. And I think what you've done so far is a credit to this borough. However, there are two things I want to bring up. Your temporary toilets, I have to say, are very welcome within the town centre. First and foremost, most residents, when they're in the town centre, don't know which businesses actually will allow them in to use their facilities, and this will obviously help in that respect, I have to tell you.
I think we've lost Councillor Burton. Right, hopefully he'll be coming back soon, but Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo what the Mayor just said, congratulating Claire and her team, particularly looking at the comms that have been put out recently since the town centre reopened, the showcases of independent businesses, particularly your success stories of the year, such as Deli Block, Cafe Block, and others around the borough. So it's been really nice to be able to share that on social media and try and spread positive messages about the town centre to get people to come in, because it is safe, it is welcoming, there's some great places to come and visit, and certainly look into the future with the next agenda item, with the GLAM investment, with the Heritage Action Zone. I'd really like to see that standard of communications continue with the videos, with the messaging, with the events in the town centre, to really place footfall at the heart of what we do, with and hopefully without COVID moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that report, Claire. Really interesting stuff, and it's very visible around the town centre, all the work that you've been doing. Just wanted to ask if you could update us on the situation with the market, how long it's going to be staying where it is. And also, I'm a little bit concerned about the lack of stall holders. Anecdotally, the guy, the big veg market, Andy, says he's not coming back to Kettering. So could you update us?
Yes, yeah, the markets has been a challenging one. Unfortunately, the locations that they were in they needed to be moved into an area that was much wider, where we could manage social distancing, and certainly in terms of conflict with some of the other queues. And we keep it under constant review. And we've tried to provide as many incentives as possible to keep the market going, and keep those traders trading by waiving the pitch fees through the free parking. At the moment, we can't accommodate, certainly if we've got the Wednesday market, and then the Friday and the Saturday, obviously they are more own rig and bigger, and we still struggle to accommodate, and we keep in regular contact with the traders. But in answer to the question, it's really up to those traders. I mean, we are actively promoting as many new traders as we can. Appreciate it's a difficult time for retail all round, whether you're a trader or in the premises. So like I say, we are trying to do everything we can to make sure that there is footfall in the marketplace. We are promoting the fact that the market is on the marketplace on social media. So we are trying to make it as attractive as possible, but it's really for those traders of whether they want to come back. And we do appreciate this is really challenging times. But in terms of the location, it's just something that we keep reviewing on a monthly basis, and we keep letting those traders know. So sorry, I haven't got a yeah, it's a difficult one to answer for definite just yet.
Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would just like to pick up where a previous colleague was with the toilets. I was very pleased to see them being put in, because I actually work very close to the town centre and saw them being installed. I would like to hope that we can do some sort of monitoring of the usage of them as well, moving forward, and the costings attached to them, because I had asked at the last town centre forum for an update on what businesses do allow members of the public to use their toilets, because it had become, prior to COVID, extremely noticeable that a lot of the businesses had stopped the free use of their toilets, and that you had to be actually using the shop or the business to be able to use their toilets. So I'm sort of now sitting with crossed fingers, hoping that, you know, it could be something that we look at supplying within our town centre, other than the ones that are in the Newland, because that the other end of Kettering is close to the market square, which we want to start encouraging the use of, hopefully when, you know, coronavirus moves on. So to have some public toilets this end of the town, I think would be very useful. So hoping that some monitoring is going on that will help influence some future decisions.
I can just answer that. As I understand, yeah, there is monitoring of the usage, and the point that Councillor Burton was mentioning before, in terms of, there is a community toilet scheme where there are businesses who in the past have allowed members of the public to use their toilets, and they've had stickers to say as much. We have actually produced we have signage for all of those shops to redirect people to the public toilets, because we do appreciate that, you know, the constraints that they have, that they might not want too many members of the public going into their premises to use the toilets.
Simon, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I appreciate it's been a really challenging time for us all, Claire. Just want to ask why the Town Centre Partnership and the Business Network have both fallen off the radar with communications. We've not had a lot of communication. I've just checked with Sarah Franklin, Chair of the Town Centre Partnership, literally about 5 minutes ago. And she said it's been weeks since she's had communications, and I haven't seen anything since the 6th of April. So just want to make that point that we seem to have fallen off the radar. And also on the videos of the businesses, we saw them going out. Great that we could start to do this, but I only saw 2 or 3, and I think the last one was about 9 weeks ago. So are there plans to do any more videos at all?
Yeah, on the second point, yes, there are plans to do more videos, and as I explained in the presentation, you know, very much focusing on the run up to Christmas. We have actually had regular contact with Sarah in advance of and during the reopening of the high streets. So that has been going on since. I appreciate if you haven't been in contact since April, but we have had regular contacts with Sarah as chair.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to talk about the signage and appreciate it. There is a lot of signage and floor stickers. That some of it might need refreshing because it gets a bit tangled. And I have noticed a few that have got black crosses put through some of the signs. Obviously, somebody who's anti-signage. How often are we refreshing these? I did make a complaint regarding one of the banks / building societies in the town centre, and I'm pleased to say that you have worked with them and they've actually resolved that issue, and it seems to be a lot better outside that, so thank you very much for that. And Simon, just to come back onto your point, we actually had a virtual meeting 2 weeks ago about the regeneration of the town centre, and nobody from either of those forums turned up on it, and I know that they were invited.
I wasn't invited, received no communication, otherwise I've been there myself.
No, Sarah was invited because she sent her apologies 5 minutes before the meeting.
So I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
So we dropped off the radar of communication again. So, but thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Can I just answer that point just about the refresh? Yes, we are proposing to have a refresh. So we are currently working through our Reopening High Street funding proposal with MHCOG, who manage that fund, and we have budgeted to completely replace all of the stickers at some point around Christmas time.
Thanks, Claire. I noticed we have the mayor back. Had you finished everything you wanted to say?
Thank you, Chair. I have no idea where I disappeared to at the end of the day. I thought I was saying something controversial, so you just flicked me off. That's what I thought had happened.
I wish I had the power.
I do believe you have, really. No, to be honest with you, I'd said about the toilets, I think is an important issue. I had got a concern about something else, but seriously, time is getting on. No need to. Thank you very much for coming back to me.
Thank you. Okay, no more hands up. So, Rochelle, the GLAM update.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform the Town Forum on the developments of the Kettering GLAM project, which refers to the Alfred East Art Gallery, the library and the Manor House Museum. Kettering benefits from having a cluster of heritage assets, all of which deliver valued cultural and creative services to the community. Together with Northamptonshire County Council and key community stakeholders, this project has been developing over the last 2 years. The collective aim for GLAM is to elevate the facilities to become a visitor destination, a hub for the community and creative startups, as well as help to unlock economic growth and inward investment within the local economy. In July this year, in response to COVID-19, the government announced plans for the Getting Building Fund. And working with SEMLEP, the GLAM project was put forward as part of the regional submission, and the project received wide support from the local Growth Fund board. In August, it was announced that the GLAM project was one of the successful projects and set to receive £3 million towards the physical transformation of the sites. The full report set out in the background papers has been considered and approved by Kettering Borough Council's executive meeting on the 15th of September and then at full council on the 23rd of September. We are now in the final due diligence process with SEMLEP and anticipate the formal confirmation of the award later this month. It is at this point further and wider consultation and engagement will commence. In preparation, a webpage has been created, which is actually formed part of This Is Kettering, so I can share that with the group in the minutes, which is thisiskettering.com/GLAM, but I'll make sure I share that through the chair in the minutes. This will build over the life of the project and will provide regular updates, information and engagement opportunities as the project progresses. It's important for members to note that the total investment of £640,000 from Kettering Borough Council and £300,000 from NCC will leverage a total of over £3.9 million into transforming these amazing cultural facilities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rochelle. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. As this is my portfolio, and I have said this in every forum where this has been raised, Rochelle, you've done an absolutely amazing job, you and your team, in getting this money sorted, in increasing the cultural activities within the borough of Kettering. And just on this forum, please pass on my thanks to you and your team. Thank you.
Hear, hear, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, I have always said, Rochelle, you've done a fabulous job, and it'd be interesting to know just how much money you've levered into Kettering since you actually joined us. But that's probably for another forum. I have no questions on that. No hands raised at all, and nobody's waving at me. So thank you. Right, last item, future Northants update from Shirley.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a brief verbal update, just to confirm, as many of you will know, the statutory roles have now been appointed to. So for the Northamptonshire Council, so the Chief Executive, the Director of Finance, the Director of Legal and Democratic, who will be the Monitoring Officer, and the Director of Adult Social Services. And as well as that, you've got the shared Director of Children's Services appointed. That will be shared between the North and West through the Children's Trust, and their Chief Executive has also been appointed. And in addition, 2 Directors of Transformation have been appointed for the new authority to push forward the transformation work. As you probably know, initial blueprints around service areas are being considered by the shadow boards, and the services. There's a lot of project work going on in the background with services being prepared for the April the 1st safe and legal launch of the new council. And as part of that process, the Kettering Town Council has been, an order has been signed for the formation of the new Kettering Town Council, which will become legal on the 1st of April 2021. So I will ask Callum to include that order and the map showing the delineation of where that covers in the minutes of this meeting, for those of you who haven't seen it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. I have no hands raised. So with that, and that's the last item on the agenda. So can I thank you all for attending? The rain stopped outside, but I'm sure you're not going to be leaving. Well, only one of us by the looks of things. Sorry, Paul. So wish you a good evening, and hope to see you all soon.